Ever caught yourself wondering if we could just outsmart aging? Well, let's dive into this explainer, where we are going to unpack humanity's millennia-old obsession with living forever. Today, we're exploring the entire fascinating spectrum of this pursuit. We'll be looking at everything from modern scientific theories and some genuinely bizarre ancient legends, all the way to a profound philosophical twist that might completely change how you view the aging process. What if you could actually live forever? It's the ultimate question, right? It's the core desire to preserve our youth, hang on to hard-earned wisdom, and totally cheat the natural limits of our biological clocks. This single question has driven emperors, commoners, and modern scientists alike, and it completely sets the stage for our journey today into the source material detailing the Life Shanyawan perspective on rejuvenation and longevity. So, here is our roadmap for the explainer today. We'll start with humanity's quest for immortality, look into the science of aging, and share some incredible legends of rejuvenation. Then we'll pivot to the philosophy of death, the eternality of the spirit, and finally, the ultimate 120-year goal. Part 1. Humanity's quest for immortality. Emperors, herbalists, and the elixir of life. According to the source text, this dream of immortality has been around basically forever. The text highlights this mythology by pointing to legendary figures who supposedly unlocked unimaginable lifespans. We're talking about Pengzu, who allegedly lived over 800 years and somehow squeezed in 50 marriages, or biblical figures like Adam, who supposedly lived past 900 years. But check out this astonishing number, 256. That was the reported age of a Chinese herbalist from the late Qing dynasty named Li Qingyun. The text mentions he had 24 wives and was amazingly still lecturing at a university when he was 200 years old. And no, this wasn't just some local myth. Both the New York Times and Time magazine actually reported on his incredible longevity back in the day. Crazy, right? Which brings us to Section 2, the science of aging, unlocking the biological clock. Because here's the thing, everything has a natural biological limit. The source explains that human cells divide about 50 times, with each cycle taking roughly 2.4 years. If you do the math on that, it puts our natural human lifespan right around 120 years. But here's where it gets really interesting. Some British and Russian scientists actually view aging as a totally curable disease, just like a heart attack or cancer. The real culprit? Telomeres. Think of them as a biological countdown clock at the ends of our chromosomes. With every single cell division, they lose between 30 and 200 base pairs from a starting point of about 10,000. When they run out, the cell just stops dividing. So the theory goes, if you stop the telomeres from shrinking, cells replicate indefinitely, and you've basically got physical immortality. Building on that exact idea, the text highlights some wild research out of UC Berkeley. Scientists there identified what they call a longevity gene. Hypothetically, if this gene could stretch that 2.4-year cell division cycle we just talked about out to, say, 5 years, boom, humans could live to 250. Push that cycle to 20 years, we are literally talking about a 1,000-year lifespan. Mind-blowing. And it isn't just genetics, it's also about the brain. The source details how altering signals to the hypothalamus can actually hit the brakes on the aging process. And the pituitary gland, when that shrinks, the body ages super rapidly. To fight this, the text notes that 107 experts spent 43 years researching until they extracted an anti-aging substance called the HD element. This element supposedly restores the pituitary gland to a youthful state, completely holding off joint and organ aging. Okay, let's pivot to Section 3, Legends of Rejuvenation, Folktales of the Fountain of Youth. Because long before modern science was isolating the HD element, people were passing down some wildly entertaining and honestly kind of dark folktales about staying young. The text shares this one bizarre legend about a lonely woman who had an affair with her frail elderly servant. To give him a bit more vitality, she fed him a secret family formula known as the elixir of the aged servant. Well, it worked miraculously. He transformed into a young man and fathered 2 children with her. But here is the grim twist. Terrified their secret would get out, she ended up killing him. Only then did she discover the elixir had made his bone marrow super plump and his bones basically unbreakable. But then there's this incredible visual story from the text. Just picture this. A young, agile woman with a graceful figure is sprinting down the street, carrying a wooden stick, furiously chasing a fragile-looking, snow-white-haired old man. Naturally, bystanders rush in, totally outraged, trying to stop this woman from beating up the poor guy. But wait for the punchline here. She wasn't an abusive youngster at all. She was actually over 100 years old. And the old man? That was her 70-year-old son. Turns out, she had been taking a special family recipe to preserve her youth. Her stubborn son kept refusing to take his pills, so he aged normally and turned completely gray. So yep, this was literally just a 100-year-old mother disciplining her 70-year-old kid for not listening to her. The text even notes that these legendary pills were later refined for the imperial court by the famous physician Huatou. All right, moving on to Section 4, the philosophy of death, the paradigm shift. Here is where the explainer takes a massive paradigm shift. We are introduced to the Life Shanyan philosophy, which completely flips everything we've just talked about right on its head. According to their values, humans are crafted by the greatest creator, meaning our lifespans are meant to be finite. So chasing physical immortality, they argue that goes directly against the creator's will. And the core belief is summed up perfectly in this quote. Death is actually the ultimate equalizer, because when it comes down to it, the inevitability of death is the one single thing that treats emperors, billionaires, and everyday people exactly the same. They use this amazing metaphor, saying that seeking physical immortality is as futile as looking for fish on a tree. The philosophy points out a really profound idea. If we actually lived forever, all the earthly injustices we see today would just persist indefinitely. Nothing would ever change. It is exactly because life has an expiration date that humanity actually has hope and room for new things to evolve. We are supposed to live our limited days vibrantly, without regrets, not just drag them out forever. Which leads us to Section 5, the eternality of spirit, nourishing the true self. So, if physical immortality is totally off the table, what's the alternative? The source material breaks human life down into two distinct parts. On one side, you have the physical body, which is just a mortal vessel. It's temporary and it absolutely cannot reach heaven. On the other side is the spirit, which is eternal. So, practitioners of this philosophy, known as Life Shanyan Celestials, do not waste their finite time or energy trying to keep the mortal vessel around forever. Instead, they pour all their resources into nourishing the spirit, because that's the true self, the only part that actually moves on to heaven. Finally, Section 6, the 120-year goal, maintaining the vessel. Now, you might be thinking, does that mean they just don't care about their physical health? Not at all. The text uses a super practical metaphor here. The body is a vehicle or a ship. I mean, you wouldn't just stop doing maintenance on the car you drive every day, right? The physical body has to be taken care of so it runs properly. They heavily prioritize well-being so that every person can live their life completely free from illness, free from disasters, and free from unnecessary pain. And they actually have an incredibly specific target. The ultimate goal laid out for these practitioners is to enjoy love until the age of 100 and live vibrantly right up to that natural biological limit we talked about earlier, 120 years. Once they hit that exact milestone, the text explains they use a method called Chan Yuan meditation to peacefully, voluntarily leave the physical vessel behind. At that moment, they joyfully transition to a much higher level of existence, heading to realms the source calls the 1,000-year world, the 10,000-year world, or the Elysium Islands continent. And that leaves us with one final, deeply provocative question straight from the end of the source text. How exactly do we transcend time and space? If the goal is to hit 120, drop the physical vessel, and leap to a higher level of existence, what does that actually look like? It's a huge, fascinating thought to end on, isn't it? It challenges literally everything we assume about the limits of life and what might just be waiting for us on the other side.